Hello and welcome to CMC. I'm Carol Newcomb-Aludo, member of the CMC Board of Trustees. It's great to see all of you today on such a sort of lacking sun type day, but it's going to get better. It's going to be sunny and warm before you know it. Today's forum, I Am My Brother's Keeper, Engaged, is brought to us with support from the Puffin Foundation West, represented here by Java Kittrick. Java, thank you very much. Many of our Puffin friends and associates, and of course also in partnership with YMCA. Please help me thank both of these organizations. In February 2014, President Barack Obama launched the My Brother's Keeper initiative to address overwhelming and persistent disparities in opportunity faced by boys and young men of color. Around the nation, partnerships were formed to begin to address the challenge. Today, we will hear about one such initiative, a partnership between the Kirwan Institute, the Urban League, and Franklin County Job and Family Services. So please help me welcome the Director of African American Male Initiative in the Columbus Urban League, Aletha Stewart Wall. Kirwan researcher and professor at OSU, Maurice Stevens. A participant in My Brother's Keeper, Tyrese Jackson, a student at Metro Early College, Middle and High School. And I found out this is a new building, and he's very interested in civil engineering and IT, but you'll hear more from him. And in the role of host today, Senior Project Manager at Franklin County Department of Job and Family Services, Charles Noble. Charles?
Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'd like to start by thanking the Franklin County Commissioners who presented the seed funding for this program to pilot, and now $860,000 worth of funding to date. I'd also like to thank the United Way of Central Ohio for funding our Junior Shepherds Initiative, which Tyrese is a part of. And I'd like to thank, most importantly, all of you for being here to discuss with us and highlight this very important project and initiative that we have through the county. So thank you again. So we're going to start off with Dr. Maurice, and he's going to present an overview of trauma-informed care.
Yeah, basically, so I just want to sort of set the frame a little bit and then get out of the way as quickly as possible, because we're wanting this to be as conversational as we can have it be. And the way I wanted to frame it a little bit was to share with you that when we were at Kirwan kind of talking about and thinking about what we wanted to share in this conversation today, and how we wanted to share it, we wanted to get across a sense of some of the unique things that we do at Kirwan as an engaged research institute in relation to race and ethnicity. And a couple of the things that emerged as really unique about what we do is, one, that we think about opportunities as opposed to just framing things in terms of deficit or deficiency, right? So we do a lot of work around mapping opportunities in the spaces that we look at. The other thing was that we were seeing emerging in the different domains that folks are doing research in, this need to think differently about how we emerge as individuals and how the problems that we look at emerge. And probably a lot of you have heard about what trauma-informed approaches to whatever, maybe trauma-informed approach to school discipline, and rather than thinking about an individual as sort of having a deficit themselves, looking at the context out of which whatever behavior we might be engaging is coming from. So our critical trauma-informed approach at Kirwan begins with knowing that even when we take a trauma-informed approach to looking at different things, that there are lots of different definitions of trauma, all right? So part of what we find is that it allows us to start asking new questions about how things emerge. So it's not just focusing on individuals or focusing on a particular issue, but asking how did that come to be? Sometimes that goes across generations. Sometimes it extends into different kinds of domains, but we've been seeing how these domains are connected with each other, and we're really trying to ask new questions about what those connections mean, and it's powerful. So what we want to do today is basically talk about this program as exemplary of that kind of approach. And so what that means is that we think in these approaches, we think about content, what is the thing that we're looking at, but we also think about form, right? What is the structure of a program, a civic engagement program we might design? What's the structure of a program like this? How does it actually work? And then we also think more broadly about objectives and outcomes and impact, right? So we are interested in immediate outcome, but we also are thinking about the broader impact. So instead of just thinking about how a program like this impacts individuals, we also want to ask, and we're beginning to start looking at what are good metrics for thinking about these things, to ask, how does the change that's happening for individuals who participate in the program, that includes staff and participants, how does that actually impact the environment, right? So it's not only how are individuals emerging out of their environments, but also how are the environments being impacted over time. So that's kind of how we're going to approach the conversation today, with some leading questions. But Charles is going to give us more of a sense of the context for the program itself.
Yeah, thank you. So in 2014, the City of Columbus accepted the My Brother's Keeper Challenge, and Franklin County Department of Job and Family Services also accepted My Brother's Keeper Challenge. So I was fortunate at the time to be an employee at the Kerwin Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity, where we had the opportunity to apply what we had learned from, the research that we had done, from the experience, and then see if we can design a approach that actually can now start to move the needle on some critical issues on the south side of Columbus. So let's start with just a quick overview of the south side. Everybody familiar with the south side of Columbus? All right. I know that kind of came out of nowhere, right? So south side of Columbus, right? One of the youth gun violence hotspots around the city of Columbus. One of the areas with the highest rates of STDs, highest rates of vacancies, highest rates of infant mortality, right? And so what I'm describing, right, are the systems, is the character, is the template, right, that folks have to sort of move through this opportunity landscape on the south side of Columbus, right? So south side of Columbus also has one of the lowest opportunity areas, meaning that if we're looking at educational, if we're looking at workforce, if we're looking at the built environment, right, what we know is there isn't what necessarily leads to opportunity, or is not what helps to facilitate it. And so given sort of our approach, we thought that we could do something with it. So we have three primary pillars that we use to build My Brother's Keeper from. First was a place-based strategy, meaning that we want to go to the south side. We want to be in the streets. We want to be where the kids are. We want to be where their families are. Because if we can engage there, we have an opportunity to build internal capacity, build external capacity, and start to build a network within the south side that the kids in our program, Tyrese, you're not a kid, my apologies, are going to be able to leverage. Second is collective impact. Can't do it all on our own, right? We would love to, but that is not feasible. And so we worked with Nationwide Children's Hospital to be able to provide healthcare screenings. We have a series of partners, Boys and Girls Club, the Kerwin Institute, all kinds of folks that are able to meet a niche, right? And so if we can draw these disparate sort of silos together, and then we can direct them at a specific target, then we can create some impact. Secondly, two-generational. Very important overlaps, in parents, in times of parents, and in the development of the kids, right? And so we cannot, or we did not envision a program that didn't also want to work with the parents in one way or another. And so given the place-based approach, given the collective impact, and then given the two-generational model, these are sort of the fundamental pillars of what we thought, would be a good, successful program for moving the needle again with young men of color on the south side. So I'll leave my comments at this quote, and then I'll open it up for questions, or for questions to the panel. Pedro Noguera said that black men are overrepresented on every statistic that evidences failure and underrepresented on every statistic that represents success, right? We need to flip that paradigm. And I think that programs like My Brother's Keeper, designed and executed well, I think can help us to push that forward. So my first question I want to ask Olitha. So tell us, can you provide, after you've heard a little bit about the strategy behind My Brother's Keeper. You've heard about the neighborhood conditions. Can you provide some insight into your experience with My Brother's Keeper and also your experience on the South Side?
Absolutely. We're blessed. We're quite happy to be partnered with the Kirwan Institute, the geniuses there, which I had the pleasure of meeting some more of them today, which was really my honor. Because of the opportunity mapping, their work around implicit bias, many of the things that they've done have removed the racial aspects and gotten right down to the data. And so to that, our function in partnering with them, which we were fortunate enough to have the city of Columbus fund us to allow us to function in and on the South Side, and then recognized by the county that this would be a valuable partnership between Kirwan, which does the actual data aspect, and then bring in AAMI to be the actual culturally competent aspect of the work. And so on the South Side, like Mr. Noble has already stated, gun violence is rampant. Gang violence is rampant. Although through our work, we've been able to affect it in some positive ways. But there's a lot of work to be done. IAMMBK, though, allows us to work to remove barriers that these young men are facing, because many of the gentlemen who work in AAMI in our Choose to Change program, which is our reentry program, or our family reunification program, which is our father-to-father program, or our neighborhood violence intervention program, which is our gang intervention program, where we literally go to the corners and work with young men and young women who are in the alleys, in the drug houses, on the corners in front of the stores, and engage with them and offer them opportunities to escape the path that many of the men in our programming have experienced. And so through that space, we're able to offer a sort of mentorship, a sort of guidance that then allows us to help mitigate some of those barriers and some of those obstacles that the opportunity youth on the South Side are currently facing, which is enormous. There's a number of obstacles.
And I agree with what you just said, because, I wasn't born on the South Side, but I believe in 2014, I moved to Columbus, to the South Side, and I've actually witnessed some of the things. Like, I went to Columbus South High School, and I witnessed people with drugs and gangs and things like that. People come and ask me, "Are you a Blood or a Crip?" I'm like, neither. And they'll be like, "Well, you gotta claim one." I've seen it, and being a part of this program has allowed me to see individuals who need that help, and I can help them, get them to where that we all are as individuals. So yeah.
So, yeah, can I ask a question with that? 'Cause one thing that makes me think about is, the sense of safety, or not having a sense of safety, and one of the things we take into consideration what it actually does to a person to be in the context where you're not necessarily feeling safe, where your sympathetic nervous system is, on high alert, and you're hypervigilant and that kind of thing. So I'm curious about two things. One is how you think about that in relation to the work, like how you actually respond to that. And then also for you, if there are things in the program that help with that.
And another reason why I love Kirwan, no, seriously, because it puts it in the context of this. So we have individuals on our team who are like gang founders. Not like the first blood in Columbus, like who was from Columbus, is an actual intervention worker at the Columbus Urban League. They call him Adam, which means first blood if you are a member of the blood community. And so out of this space, we're able to work toward a space of safety, because when young people see this gentleman on the corner, and they also see the people who are now functioning in that same space of violence and drugs and instability in that community, it offers them an alternative. So then we're able to create that space, or at least somewhere where they can begin to gravitate toward. And in that space that's been provided in conjunction with the city, in collaboration with the county through their generosity, we're able to offer guys like Therese. We had 2 guys in the program who were literally, they and their families were shooting at one another and fighting at every opportunity. And we hosted a mediation of which the tremendous people at Kerwin. CJ was there and Elisa was there. There were other people there who aren't present, Josh, and we were able to stop that. We took these 2 boys to Ohio State. Coach Meyer and the football team were kind enough and generous enough to give us recruit passes. We were in the recruit room. These 2 boys, who could have very easily killed one another, were sitting next to each other laughing like they had grown up in the same home and eating at the same table. And so this is the type of safety that can be had when we offer alternatives, through the collective impact, place-based, the near-peer mentoring that fine young men like Tyrese offer.
And also, to answer your question, also going to the different sites. So each week on Saturdays, a certain amount of students, they go to different sites, whether that's nationwide, whether that's iResolve, which is a workout training place, whether that's swimming and things like that. And those different sites, they teach you different things. Not only do you have fun with it, but they also teach you like leadership skills and things like that. So when I was a part of iResolve, they not only taught us like different workouts, but they also taught us like how to be a man and etiquette and things like that. So also think a part of what O said, that also plays a part in how we shape the individuals at I Am My Brother's Keeper program.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I heard used to talk about, Olitha, was bringing the kids to Ohio State. And so this was one of the critical elements of this program, right? We have to provide exposure. And so I remember a conversation sitting in the living room of one of the participants, and the mom is like, we have to convince him that the college is for him, right? How do we convince him of this? And so his thought was, and I think he was like 11 or 12 at the time, he said that my mom is poor. All college is not for me, right? And so part of sort of the exposure, part of the experience, part of being able to provide safe spaces outside of the context of, what happens on the South Side is so important, because the opportunity to stop and reflect, right, and then build on that growth. LaJuan Coleman, one of the proprietors of iResolve Fitness, said it's like, these kids, it's like lions chasing them every day, right, every single day on the South Side. And then when you get the chance to do My Brother's Keeper, now we have a safe space. Maurice, one of the questions, or one of the things that you were talking about was looking sort of at the integrative systems, right, and trauma, and then how we can sort of use a program like My Brother's Keeper to influence systems related to a trauma-informed approach.
And your question is?
And so the question is, are you able to expand on that?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. I think I got it, yeah. And again, I'm not in the program myself, but I do know some things about how it runs and what the structure is. And so a couple really concrete examples for how a trauma-informed approach manifests in the structure of the program. So I know that on Saturday programming, which is basically 4 hours of intense activity, that it begins with something as basic as breakfast, right? Which is speaking to and understanding that folks might be coming in with different levels of nutrition or hunger that have to do with the context, right? And it's a shared process or experience where people are able to kind of settle in with each other before going on and doing things together. The other piece is that I know that there are practices built into the structure, like coming together in circle, breaking into smaller groups, reflecting on what's going on in the group, the way you were talking about it, that actually intentionally build a kind of mindfulness practice into the structure of the program itself, right? And lots of folks have looked at the relationship between mindfulness and kind of reducing system stress. Those are just 2 examples. So
Tyrese, one of the stories that we were just talking about when we sat down, was your experience with the program. Tyrese decided that he needed to, and in his best interest, take a bit of a hiatus from My Brother's Keeper, and that we were able to bring him back. So can you talk a little bit about your experience, sort of where we were at that day and then what happened next?
Okay, so when I originally got into My Brother's Keeper program, I was not a junior shepherd because they didn't have the program actually, and then I would have been too young anyway. So I was in My Brother's Keeper, I think, for a year, maybe a year and a half. And, I was going every Saturday. I wanted more like help with leadership skills and things like that I just need to work on for myself. Me and my dad, we discuss every night things that I need to work on. So we were discussing like, yeah, you should go to this program because it'll help you with your leadership skills and things like that. So one Saturday, Adrian, who he was talking about, he came and spoke to the group, so me and all the other individuals. And I noticed that the people there, or the youth there, they were not taking it as serious as they should have. He was talking about how he was in jail and how he had got out and how he changed his life around and now he's a better person. And the youth, they were not taking it as serious. They were asking questions like, have you ever shot someone, or things like that. And I thought that those questions weren't as educated or as good questions to be able to help better themselves, better me as an individual. So I decided that maybe it was time for me to step back and just, use that time on Saturdays to better myself personally instead of with that group. So I did take a step out of the group, but then CJ actually, he told me, hey, we're having this Junior Shepherds program. You should join. And I was like, I don't know. But I was like, I'll be open-minded. So I came in and I joined, and I'm like, okay. I see there was a new group of students. I seen that, I had the ability to help the students myself because now they look at me as not only a mentor, but as a friend. So they say, Tyrese, how do you do this? Or Tyrese, can you help me with this? And I say, yeah, because they might not want to ask, Charles or CJ and things like that because, they might be fearful. But if I'm, their age, I'll be like, oh, Tyrese, can you help me with this? Or how do you do this? Or how did you get this? And I'll be like, yeah, this is how you do it. And then, it builds a better relationship all together, as us individuals, So yeah, basically, it's helped me and them become stronger individuals and better leaders.
Yeah, can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
Also, I want to say, what an awesome, this is a great example, too, of what it means to think about a program differently, right? So if you're really outcome-focused, you might say, oh, a student stepping out or a student who stops out from school or something like that, that's a sign of the program failing, right? But this is a great example of how, when you're thinking impact and when you're thinking different, this is actually a moment of discovery, right, for the program itself. So the program this is engaged research, right? It's about what we're learning together. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's a great example of that.
And I wanted to kind of revisit one thing that you said earlier, Doc, is about food. Kerwin is doing some fantastic research around food insecurity. And for us, when we look in our refrigerator and we've got a lot of options, we're like, wow. But a lot of these kids, so we're at Barrick after a situation, we had a Cap City Nights Festival that the city puts on. There's a young man who was the same age as my daughter at that time. He's about 10. And it's like 12 o'clock. And I'm like, what are you still doing here? And he's like, well, I'm about to go home. I'm like, where do you live? He lives far. I'm like, well, I'm going to walk with you. We get to his house. He goes through the basement window, comes to the back door, unlocks the door like, Mr. Oh, you want to come in? I'm like, where's your parents? He's like, I don't know. I go in. His mom's got a giant padlock on her door. He's got a jar of mustard in the refrigerator. So when we're talking about food insecurity and the data that's around that, he came to Cap City Nights to eat. Some of these kids are coming to IAMMBK to eat. And that's really the only nutritious meal they're going to get. So being connected on all these levels, from the street to the lab, is, oh my God, it can't be overstated. It's huge from my perspective.
That's another thing that I really think that is phenomenal about this program is people like CJ, Miss Annalisa, and things like that. They'll actually come, like maybe not every week, but they'll come occasionally, to see how you're doing, see if you have food, see how your life is going with your parents, academics. If you need a tutor, they'll be there to tutor you. Anything that you need, just give them a call or ask Charles or ask O or anybody, and they'll be like, okay, I got you. Here I come. I'm on the way. Within a split of a second, I'm on the way. With no questions asked. That's what I really like about this program.
And I hope it's becoming clear, like you can see how this approach it's taking the intervention model and turning it inside out, right? The pillars that Charles mentioned, the way that we're seeing, and this is from the ground up, we're seeing how things like food security and the program are connected. In fact, I think there's a research project that is developing with a food security mapping project is connecting with this program to see sort of how that maps on in this particular space. But I hope you're getting a sense of what is possible when you turn this model inside out. Right?
So one of the things that I think is really, one of the things that I found profound as I was going through the program is the scope of the need. There was not a day that went by that something incredibly harrowing didn't happen. I remember a incident after our first Christmas party. A mom who had boys in the program, she was shot on the south side, shot through both legs. In random gun violence, right? And so her sons were in the car with her. And so they also experienced, the degree of trauma. And so thinking about the potential application of this program to areas that we know where people are going to experience, high community level trauma or individual trauma. Can we talk a little bit about what do you all see on the panel as some opportunities to engage around things that are causing trauma that folks may not know, right? What do you, from your vantage point, what do you see? On the south side, it can be, on the east side, around around this model.
Well, I'd like to jump in there because we have enjoyed some relative peace relative to gang violence over the last several months. People in Columbus may or may not know that during January, a lot of shootings happen engaged with gang violence. And these coincide with what are called hood days. So many of the notable gangs are founded after the deaths of members. So in January, we have about 7 hood days that coincide with different parts of town. And as a result, there is shooting back and forth between these groups that are in conflict. We just saw the night before last 3 young men shot on Morrill Avenue in Columbus. And in that space, this partnership allows us at the Urban League to engage with the individuals that are being affected by those shootings. Also work with individuals inside of IAMMBK to help make proper referrals through some of the connections that are available through services that are connected to IAMMBK. So it's completely possible that at any time a shooting can happen where one of our youth can be involved, or a shooting can happen that we need to engage with so that it doesn't spiral out of control and individuals are killed and more hood days are created and more back and forth shootings occur. So we are working in both of those spaces in the interest of this program to both shield the young men as best we can, as well as put a lid on some of the things that are potentially unfolding while they're happening in real time.
And I would also like to add to, but if you're thinking, maybe not to the extent of gang violence or anything, but you can also say that, like I can say a story about me. So me and my dad, we actually got into a disagreement a couple weeks back. And we were disagreeing about, we were disagreeing about how I was not excelling in the classes that I take. And at my school, I have to get a 90% in the class in order to pass and go to the next level. And I was not at that level yet. So me and my dad, we were disagreeing, and he was saying that I wasn't working hard enough. And I was trying to tell him, like, I'm really working hard. It's just these classes are really hard and things like that. So with the staff and things, they came over and they were like, you know what, Tyrese, I see where you're coming from. I see where Dad comes from. And they helped us get back together in the way that me and my dad usually are. Me and my dad are really close. And that kind of broke at that moment, that day, our connection was kind of broken just a little bit, not to a large extent, but it was kind of broken. And CJ, Charles, and things, the Miss Annalisa, they came and they said, you know what, Tyrese, let's get that connection back together. You and your dad, you have a strong connection. You don't live with your mom, and your dad is all you have, and you are all your dad has, So you guys need to have a good, strong connection. So he came in, they helped us through that situation to be a better family, I guess you could say.
So in a few minutes, we're going to move to the audience questions, but I want to I want you all to answer one final question, or actually just provide some concluding thoughts, on what you've seen with the program thus far, or any insight that you think might be valuable.
So overall, I think that the program has grown in the 3 years that I've been in it. It's grown substantially, I think, because in the beginning, just starting out, people weren't taking the program serious. The staff, they might not have, cared as much as they do now. Not saying it like that, but kind of, But
Gotta love honesty, right?
But now I see that the program, as it's grown and it's become more mature, you'd say, that the staff care more. The staff, they take care of you. The staff make sure that each student individually, maybe not every week or maybe not every second, but each at some point in their time speaking with you or speaking to someone, they take care of you, make sure that you're at the point where you need to be a successful young male. So yeah.
Right, you can see it too, that's building in more of this kind of a material approach to mindfulness in the structure of the program, having more opportunities of talking to participants about what they're learning, where they want to be, what the next steps are, and the staff, and it's working because people are really feeling like, hey, these bonds are actually real and meaningful. Because I know the staff always did care, but it's coming through.
I didn't mean to like.
Sorry, I just.
And so I would just like to add that I'm a restored citizen. And so learning the language of collaboration through this process is something that I've really enjoyed. Sometimes when we put two people together, they don't necessarily communicate optimally. I've been married for 18 years, and so that has helped me understand this process, right? But learning that language of collaboration is something that I have grown from personally in this program, and that I have tried to model for the young men and model for the staff that I've worked with, because I think that that's something that is invaluable, that if we can be patient enough to learn to understand what each person is trying to convey, I think that aligns with breaking down those silos that Charles was talking about earlier.
So I've had the opportunity to work with my brother's keeper at various levels. I was in the inception phase at Kerwin. In my time at the Urban League, I had the opportunity to direct it there, and now at the county, I have another opportunity to see a different angle or see a different perspective of what this program is and what it can be. And so I think that if I could summarize my own feelings about this program, I think that what we set out to show was that we care, and we set out to show that neighborhood conditions, lack of investment, sometimes lack of support, these are things that we may not be able to replicate, right? But we know that if there's a gap, if there is a niche, and there are invested people that have the vision and the leadership to see this through, then we can have an impact. And so I appreciate, the time I've been able to spend with my brother's keeper from all of these different levels, especially because, we have an example right in front of us, of the potential, right, that exists, on south sides across the city and across the state. And so I'll leave my thoughts there. So at this point, it is CMC's tradition to take audience questions. Please state your name, ask your question, and we thank you in advance for not making long editorial comments. Do we have any editorializers in here? Maybe not. I know I did for sure.
Editorializer right here.
Thank you.
No, so to the gentleman there in the middle, there's certainly a lot of things that we could do as a community to help improve the circumstances that lead to violence and gangs and things like that. Is there any one thing that you saw, as you went through all of that you think, if we just focused more on this, that stands the best chance of making a difference? There's no one thing that's going to cure it, but, do we need to focus most on education or bringing jobs to the community or something like gun control? I don't know. Is there something that we really need to focus on hard?
Actually, I think that the one thing that we should really focus on is like building leadership and character in the individuals on the south side of Columbus. Because I feel like once you build leadership and things like that into those youth, then they will take that and give it to their friends, and then they'll give it to their friends, and it'll keep going on. And then, it may not change in a day or a week, but it could eventually change a small little bit. So just keeping the leadership skills and making sure that, we install the leadership skills into the youth right now.
Hi, I'm Brenda Fields with the Capital Kids Program with the City of Columbus. My question is, do you plan on expanding this program? I'm on the west side, in the bottoms, K through 5, and all I can see is a lot of times there's some brilliant kids there, but they need leadership. They need male leadership. As a female, I cannot teach a boy how to be a man. So do you plan on expanding the program? Because they need you badly. So that's just something I'm praying that will happen for these young men that are there, because they're pretty smart, but they don't have that guidance.
So thank you. We are planning on expanding the program to different parts of the city, and so I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I think that what we've been able to learn now from sort of the 3 years of experience that we've had with the program, we hope to be able to apply that to different corners of the city and different corners of the county. So the answer to your question is yes, and stay tuned. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for coming. Java Kittrick, Puffin Foundation. And obviously you're dealing with limited resources, and the children have very limited opportunities beyond their own schools and their neighborhoods. Yet some of these youth are so frequently overexposed to complex societal issues. And what I didn't understand really are who are all your partners in My Brother's Keeper. I know the Urban League is here, or you have programs in schools, or you have other not-for-profit partners or businesses that are coming in to help. Thank you.
So what I didn't do was bore everyone with the details of the program, but I think that being able to provide an overview and everybody jump in, if there's an area to contribute. So the model basically of this program is experiential learning. We use experiential learning to support the other activities that we'd like to see develop through with the kids throughout the program. And so we have right now basically 6 experiential learning sites located on the south side. We've done summer camps with Camp Odioqua. We've done summer camps with the Boys and Girls Club. We've partnered with OSU or through Kerwin at OSU to provide study tables. We've done food assistance with the Children's Hunger Alliance. Directions for Youth is on site on Saturdays to be able to help deal with mental health issues. The violence intervention specialists are there to help mitigate and mediate hot button issues. And so it is, so as we try to build out this collective impact, the model keeps getting larger and larger and larger because the scope of the need, is immense and it's multifaceted and it's complex. And so as we sit today, I think we're, thinking through other partners to be able to bring to the table. But I think that, as we continue to build, looking at sort of these critical elements of food, looking at, 2-generational, looking at mental health, looking at age-appropriate development, looking at education, and remedial assistance. And so, in one way or another, now it sounds like we're trying to do everything, right? Which we are, and so why not?
And I need to, if I might add, that is part of another thing other than cultural competency that the Urban League brings is all of the partners like the Huntington, partners like internal programming that we offer. We have a brilliant program, 700 credit, that we introduce to families in a 2-generational setting. Homebuyer education is another thing that we have introduced into programming. And so there are a whole host of partners that we have internal to the Urban League that allows us to expand the city of Columbus and all that they bring to the table, that allows us to expand the menu of offerings and expand that partnership where they bring those things to the table at no additional cost, I might add.
I just wanted to name a few new partners that have come on board recently. One is the Friends of the Metro Parks and the Columbus Metro Park System. And another is the Shambhala Institute, who are giving us a lot of feedback around instituting mindfulness practice. Thanks, partners. But it's also really, it's a powerful collective impact, thinking about collective impact in this direction. How do we bring folks together to impact the program? But it's also at the same time creating these webs of an informal and formal connection with folks all over. So it goes both ways. Right?
Hello, my name is Carter Stewart. I'm with the Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation. And I wanted to follow up on a point that you made, Maurice, about how outcomes can be misinterpreted, which is very true. But it also begs a question of, or makes the point that outcomes are still extremely important, particularly with the Obama Foundation, for example, coming online. I'm sure that foundation will be looking at programs like this. You've had great success attracting partners. But in terms of showing your outcomes and showing your success, what metrics do you point to in terms of the kids who have gone through the program and how they've done compared to kids who have not gone through the program who are similarly situated and how they've done?
I'll hand that over to Diana.
Yeah, I get it. So what we've done right now, so the White House has, I think, 5 different sort of indicator fields that go from education to family stability to drug and alcohol dependence, so on and so forth. And then it looks at sort of also age ranges, so from 0 to 3, 3 to 16, 16 to 24, so on and so forth. And so since I've been sort of at the county for the last month and not at the Urban League, the last part of the evaluation that we were developing actually was actually now looking at, I think maybe 14 or 15 different indicators tracking the children through the program. So looking at attendance, looking at grades, looking at behavioral things, looking at, the family stability, looking at sort of all of these different metrics. And so I'm not exactly sure where we're at in that process, but looking basically to align, what our evaluative activity is with the indicators that have been listed from the White House. And so I think that we can have after I get a little bit more info from my Kerwin friends, we can have a little bit deeper conversation on that. But that is the trajectory of looking at the evaluation. And so then also the control model, I don't think that we have a control necessarily, but looking sort of at similarly situated kids, within the community.
I want to clarify too that, so I'm not arguing for impact over outcome. It's sort of a both and. And when we're thinking outcome, very often we're looking at a time frame that's a couple years long or 5 years long, or usually it's a funding cycle time frame. That leans us to looking at particular markers, like the ones that Charles mentioned. There's a lot of possibility in also thinking impact, longer term impact, so then we can imagine, well, what are the markers when we're looking over the long term? Are they different? Are there new things that we can be thinking about? So definitely not one over the other, but both and.
And then, I think to follow up, one of the interesting things that I've been really thinking about a lot lately, is we program for people, right? But people have to come through systems, and people have to live in neighborhoods, and people have to interact with different, levels of the socio-ecological model that, we have no agency over. And so we know where there is hyper poverty, right? We know where there is a concentration of infant mortality. We know where there's concentrations of vacancy, concentrations of unemployment. And so can we start looking at this conversation maybe perhaps spatially? Can we start to disaggregate, or can we start to disrupt, where we know concentrations of these things exist? And maybe that might lead to some new applications or some new ideas.
Hi, I'm Bill Lafayette. I'm owner of Regionomics and a very proud Southsider. And I've got 2 questions. First, how many youth are in the program, and how has it grown over the time it's been active? And second, do you do any formal career exploration, and if so, what's that look like?
If I could speak to this, we currently have about 82 TANF approvals. So in order to be a part of IAMMBK, you have to be in a certain socioeconomic bracket. without putting anybody on the spot. So you have to be TANF eligible. And so we have about 82 of those approvals currently. We're charged with serving 75 of these young people on the south side. And so we've grown through this time, but because of high mobility, a lot of times kids who live on the south side will move to the north side, depending on, how their Section 8 or other assistance is situated. And so that's to that question. The second question that you asked, we're currently using the Ohio Means Jobs website, and we recently took most of our boys, all of our boys, through the career cluster inventory and skills inventory to identify their career aptitudes. And we're working to connect them with our partners at the Urban League, which are numerous, aligned with those skills and those aptitudes. And we're looking to then leverage summer youth employment, which the city does and the county does, to connect them, to pay them the $10 an hour that they would get to work at a rec center, to actually work in their area of aptitude or skill.
We have time for one more quick question.
Well, I'm really impressed by all your efforts, and I'm familiar with programs, volunteer programs at Franklin County Children's Services. I wondered what kind of outreach initiatives the Kerwin Institute does, or Brothers Keepers, to reach, to spread their expertise to perhaps the city police, the city council, the state legislature, the people who I don't necessarily see them necessarily as partners, but certainly as being being very much assisted by having the personal, the intimate knowledge that you have from working in this area. So
I think that
maybe haven't gotten to that point yet, but I just wonder if that's
I
something you
think
really tried to do.
I think your question hits the nail on the head. We have Tyrese here because we can't speak for Tyrese, right? We can't share his perspective. He has to share his perspective, and the audience gets to engage with that. And so maybe I'll turn this over to Marie, since I'm not, I'm no longer an employee at Kerwin. But if you want to talk a little bit about being able to apply this.
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly about it. So the Kerwin Institute is an engaged research institute. So a lot of the work that we're doing happens because folks come to us and say, we want to research this particular issue, can you engage with us? So that's one way. We work with folks, do the research, produce reports, and that's a way for us to also make recommendations and kind of have outreach at that level. But we also have other things. So there's an implicit bias team at Kerwin that does lots. I mean, just the reach and the breadth and reach of what they do there is incredible. And in that way, even though they are people ask for them to come and do trainings, they're actually doing a kind of outreach there and education there. And then there's, of course, this program. But in general, Kerwin isn't an outreach organization, but we do reach out and make contact through our research and training.
And also, not only do they reach out, and that was with they also reach out through schools or whatever. Like, that's how I found out about the program. They came to my school, my old school, South High School, and then they were talking to some kids, and they were like, "Hey, Tyrese, have you ever heard about this program?" And then that's how I got into the program. So that's another way how they also reach out to the youth.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed today's forum. We encourage you to continue the conversation with coffee and cookies in the back, and the cookies are very good. You can view and share today's forum and all of our forums on CTV, Columbus Television, on WOSU, and on PBS affiliates statewide through the Ohio channel, and anytime on our CMC website. Please help me thank our sponsors, the Puffin Foundation West. Thank you. And and our partner YMCA. And of course, our speakers, Aletha Stewart-Waugh, Maurice Stevens, Charles Noble, and of course, Therese Jackson. Thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you all either Thursday night or next week for sure. Thank you.